Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, senior Lakers insider, as well as lead Lakers content creator for Offside. Joined on this, you know what? Really not that hot of a day, honestly. We just found out minutes before I went live that unfortunately Dolly Parton just passed away. It's one of those passings that is honestly kind of difficult to just like try to go about the rest of your daily business after. I say that, as a fan of a lot of the songs that she wrote, but honestly more so just a fan of the person that she was, and the bar that she just continued to live up to. So I had scheduled out this show and penciled it in to the rest of the day and stuff. And I am, going to go ahead and uh, record this episode and then pick up Avery and tell her all about Dolly, and hope that y'all, kind of do the same. So, yeah, today on the show, we're going to be talking about JJ Redick's season ahead, the super weird circumstances it's taking place under. And we will, discuss whether we think or whether I think this roster fits all of his basketball ideologies. We will discuss how he might be able to adjust if it doesn't. And just kind of generally, preview his upcoming season. And then, as always, towards the end of the episode, hit me with questions, hit me with comments, and I will cover the ones that I can. Volcator starts us off by saying the podcast feed has been down on YouTube Music. Honestly, like the podcast feed is super weird in the way that it works. I'm going to go ahead and just like manually update it while I'm here, just for the sake of, having it taken care of. But yeah, you're not the first person to complain about it. It's in a weird place as far as Google goes. I also know that we just moved from Megaphone to Odyssey's own platform, and there might have been some kinks along the way. So I'll talk to our tech team there at Odyssey to figure out what's going on there. But as far as like what I can control here in the moment right now, I literally just updated it. So hopefully it is up to date. Let me know if it isn't. The best way that you could get around such issues is to subscribe here. If you subscribe here to this channel, and you turn on notifications, you'll know the minute that I am going live. So and not miss any shows that way. And then you also get to see all of this extremely wide and round face too. So, win-win. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications to the show and to YouTube. And then today's show, as always, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use that promo code HMA and get $150 worth of free Prize Picks selections when you sign up. Use that promo code and win a $5 lineup of your own. And then obviously, if you guys are listening to the show in podcast form, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get them, preferably on Odyssey, maybe not on YouTube Music. But anywhere that you get them is perfectly fine by me. Let's go ahead and start the show. Let's talk about JJ Redick's his upcoming season. All right. So the first question I have going into this thing, going into talking about JJ Redick's season, is whether this roster actually fits the style of basketball that JJ Redick prefers or would prefer to see. Look, we know that he values shooting. It did take a couple steps forward as far as it's, the shooting across the roster is better this year, I would say, than last year. It's hard to, definitively say that because the Lakers said goodbye to its three of its best shooters last season, and obviously Luke Kennard, who is arguably the best shooter in the league, um, Rui Hachimura, who had become a bona fide laser, and LeBron, even though he had his ups and downs, he was one of the more productive 3-point shooters on the team over the years too. Those three guys are gone now. There is kind of an assumption that Luka is going to shoot the ball better this year than he did last year. That I have heard that Austin has been really working on his 3-point shooting. So hopefully he takes a step forward that way. We talked in the Austin Reeves season preview about how critical his step forwards shooting the basketball are going to be this season. Quentin Grimes is a good 3-point shooter. Colin Sexton is a good 3-point shooter. Will become one of the better 3-point shooters that the Lakers have had at the point guard position in a little while. And then from there, you have Mamu, who is not quite the shooter that Rui was, but is a probably more flexible or versatile scorer overall than Rui was. So you maybe take a bit of a lateral step in that kind of trade off from Rui to Mamu. And the hope is by way of having Walker Kessler, who is a better pick and roll threat alongside Luka, alongside Austin Reeves. The hope is that he will help generate better looks than DeAndre Ayton was generating in fulfilling that same role, which hopefully improves the shooting across the board for the Lakers. But that is going to be that is always going to be something that JJ Redick considers a critical aspect of the roster, its collective ability to shoot. And we know what it looks like when JJ Redick doesn't trust you as a shooter. Jared Vanderbilt has been in and out of the rotation since JJ Redick has gotten there. Chris Magnon, despite being one of the better perimeter defenders in the organization, basically never got a shot last year because he can't knock down an outside shot. We will see what kind of opportunities Adu Thiero gets this year because he is also just a non-threat from the outside. Arthur Kaluma is an interesting option that the Lakers will have at a two-way wing spot. So we will see to what extent JJ Redick uses him. Cam Carr is, I think, his shot is just absolutely textbook. And I think that if he is given the opportunity, he will become a really good shooter over the course of his career. But we don't know. It's hard to forecast a rookie's shooting ability in that first season when he's going to get somewhat limited opportunities. Bronny has taken some steps forward as a shooter, and that will need to continue if he wants to contend for minutes with Sexton and the rest of the Lakers guard rotation. So some of those guys who don't necessarily fit or reach JJ Redick's kind of bar in terms of shooting ability, those guys tend to not get the most opportunities. And that is something that JJ Redick, I think, is going to have to do a better job of in his third season, which is, those guys who don't necessarily, check certain boxes for Redick, rather than just kind of telling him to go sit over there for a little while. I would like to see JJ Redick do a better job of getting a little bit more creative to get more out of players who don't necessarily fit all of his basketball ideologies, specifically with the shooting, because that is kind of the non-starter for JJ Redick. If you can't shoot, or if you kind of gum up the offense because of your inability to shoot, you do not play for JJ Redick. And I think he could be a little less hardline with that stance. The next thing that I'm curious about here, as far as like the rosters fit within JJ Redick's ideologies, is Redick is one of the switchiest or most switch happy coaches in the NBA. And if that is going to continue, the Lakers are not going to defend very well. Now, you can make an argument that, like, if you switch from Luka to Austin, that you have two kind of defensive, I don't know if I want to call them weak spots or entry points into the offense, because I think they're both a little bit better than that. But if it's Mamu and it's Luka and it's Reeves all on the court at the same time, and a team tries to manipulate the matchups there, I think there are some games where we're going to feel like JJ Redick is a little too switch happy and just gives up some of those matchups a little too quickly. Also, Walker Kessler is just not a switchy defensive player. He is, he's elite in deep drop. He is absolutely one of the best rim protectors in the sport. But if you get into a situation where some team forces him into a switch that takes him away from the basket, that thoroughly limits the impact he can have on a game. And that is something that, JJ Redick has allowed to happen in the past in ways that have legitimately hurt the team. And I think that is going to be something that he and his coaching staff are going to have to be better with this upcoming season. So, in this is where a player like Jared Vanderbilt is really kind of intriguing to me this next season, because I do think, and we'll talk about kind of the notion of trajectories, or the trajectory that JJ Redick is on. He has improved as a basketball coach. I thought he improved over the course of his rookie season until the playoffs happened. And then I thought he improved from his first season to his second season. And I thought he was significantly better in the playoffs the second season than he was in the first. And so he is very clearly, I think, on an upward trajectory. It makes him one of the more kind of exciting younger coaches in the league. And it makes him an intriguing candidate to remain with the Lakers, even despite all of the organizational turmoil, which again, we'll talk about here in a little bit. But because of that upward trajectory, I do think the Lakers defense, or the way that this roster doesn't necessarily fit JJ's defensive ideologies, I think that will be less of an issue than it would have been, say, his rookie season. So I do think that the Lakers will switch less on the perimeter. I do think they will work a lot harder to keep, say, Kessler closer to the basket and not give up switches that pull him away from the basket, or even worse, pull him away from the basket and replace him essentially with like Austin Reeves, who all out of nowhere became one of the higher volume rim protectors in the playoffs, which didn't end well. So I think that for Redick, in going into this second season, Jared Vanderbilt is going to be this really interesting test case, because he doesn't fit JJ Redick's offensive ideologies and isn't the switchy defender who makes up for, say, Reeves or Luka's inability to switch. But if the Lakers switch less, there's a world here where Vanderbilt is given more opportunities to just pound the other team's best player, and the same can be said about Adu Thiero or Magnon if he gets more of an opportunity this year, or Bronny if he takes a step forward defensively and gets a bigger opportunity this year. Those players whose job it will be to step out onto the court. Sexton keeps on saying that he's going to be, one of those kinds of disruptors defensively. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think he's a particularly great defender. Tries hard, which is a good starting point, but but if the Lakers essentially do kind of welcome the or add to their repertoire defensively, Jared Vanderbilt just hopping out there and disrupting the other team's best wing, I think that that is something that he can more comfortably do when he's backed up by Walker Kessler at the rim, and he doesn't have to worry about, well, now, this kept on happening last year where Vanderbilt would step out onto the court and he would start possessions on the other team's best player. And then there would be one like lackadaisical off ball screen that would move him from the other team's best player to its worst offensive player. And now all of a sudden, the one thing that Jared Vanderbilt really brings to the table as a basketball player is completely mitigated. And that is something that cannot happen again this year. So if JJ Redick lightens up on the absolute dogmatic view of how critical shooting is to such a point that Vanderbilt becomes a bigger part of the rotation, and if JJ Redick backs way off on the amount of switching that the Lakers did last year to such an extent that Vanderbilt could guard a singular player for more possessions of a game and disrupt the game that way, then I think that turns Jared Vanderbilt from the negative asset who Lakers fans have been trying to get off of their roster for years on end now to a player who helps, and honestly, that's all I'm asking of Vanderbilt next year. And he's like the nth degree example of this. But I think you could talk about a version of this across the roster with JJ Redick, where like Dalton, for example, Dalton does check the box as far as JJ Redick's, again, dogmatic view of shooting. It's why Dalton got so many opportunities to fail compared to some of the other players who shoot worse than he does. But eventually he found himself completely out of the rotation because he doesn't meet the standard of basketball IQ that JJ Redick demands of his players. And I think that, obviously I would prefer for Dalton to get smarter as a basketball player. But again, you can't have a first round pick just not be part of your rotation for the extent, and at this point, just maybe not even be part of the organization moving forward. Just for the sake of dumping him to trade for Jonathan Kuminga or whatever. You can't just tell that, a first round pick to just go over there, just go away. Because as you find out, you do that frequently enough and you wind up as bereft of trade assets as the Lakers currently find themselves. So to me, the biggest question with JJ Redick this upcoming season is whether this roster actually fits his ideologies, which I think it does too for in a couple of ways. But if it doesn't, or in those ways that it doesn't, can JJ Redick adjust to those things? And based on the growth he has shown through his first couple of years and through his first couple of trips to the postseason, I think he will be able to adjust. To what extent? I guess we'll find out. I also just really want to kind of back up and discuss how we got here with JJ Redick. And the reason that I want to do that is because it, I think, goes a long way in explaining my confidence level, or setting my confidence level, that Redick will continue on in this organization, even as Iger and Kushner maybe are preparing potentially to clear the decks and bring in all of their own people. JJ Redick, the cynical side of me thought when JJ Redick was hired in the first place that was the Rob and Jeannie contingent, basically hiring a coach that everybody would link to LeBron James. And the purpose for that was that if it didn't work out with JJ Redick, that they could just like they did with Russell Westbrook, they can pin the blame on LeBron James with a fan base that had grown kind of tired of the GM. And, in doing some digging and stuff like that, like I did find out there was an aspect to the hiring, at least initially, um, that did have something to do with that. That, LeBron didn't specifically ask for JJ Redick to be hired as a coach. But this was, this did kind of align with my more cynical view of the hiring initially. But as sometimes happens, and as usually happens, multiple things can be true and multiple things can not necessarily go as planned. Like we all watched Ted Lasso during the pandemic. And remember, Ted Lasso was hired in a very cynical manner to piss off the new owner's ex-husband, right? And help run that team into the ground. And Ted arrives on the show and eventually charms everybody into the best version of themselves. And the show is all about how this guy who was hired for all of the wrong reasons wound up being the perfect hire for that organization. And I think that, obviously this isn't a storybook ending or anything like that. The Lakers haven't won a championship under JJ Redick or been promoted or anything like what is that what is that team that they I forget what team they manage there. But the with the Lakers, I do think it has worked out significantly better for Jeannie and for Rob than they thought going in. And JJ Redick went from somebody who was hired for some of the wrong reasons to somebody who Jeannie and Rob and Kurt and Linda and the rest of that kind of conglomerate or that group of decision makers have now come to Richmond. Thank you, Volcator. It's Richmond FC. Like in this case with the Lakers, they hire JJ Redick for some of the wrong reasons. He comes in and surprises everybody with like, oh shit, this is working. How about all right, because remember also the Lakers hired JJ Redick, and it wasn't like they backed up the Brinks truck for, other assistant coaches to help guide JJ Redick through this. I honestly wasn't that impressed by the assistant coaching, unit that the Lakers put in place around JJ Redick. Now, I think that group also has grown and also has improved over its time in coaching the Lakers. But yeah, the Lakers, I thought they hired JJ Redick for the wrong reasons and set him up to fail on purpose, with the hope being that everybody would be so sick of LeBron at the end of that that they would, like, the fan base would be more open to LeBron just going away. And we arrive here at the summer where the Lakers told LeBron to basically kind of go away. And JJ Redick gets to stay because he has proven himself a very adequate head coach and somebody who is capable of growing and learning on the job. So it worked out well, even though it started in kind of a weird place. It worked out well, and it makes me wonder as we head towards yet even more organizational upheaval, whether JJ Redick might be able to survive that too, as he prepares to work for an owner in Bob Iger, who watched him play for the Clippers for a few years and might have a friendship with or a relationship with right at the onset of their working relationship together. I don't know. I think it's highly possible. I think if I had to kind of predict who is most likely to survive all of the changes that are coming to the Lakers, I would probably say that Redick is probably the safest bet of everybody to be able to continue on in his current capacity with the organization, even after this sale is finalized and Jeannie and Rob and Kurt and Linda are all given their eventual walking papers. So, yeah, I think this is going to be interesting to watch. I think it's important to always keep in the back of our minds how somebody gets to where they currently are, because it oftentimes gives us an indication on where they would go from there. So as far as like, is this an audition? Of course it is. It abs it's it whenever a team changes ownership, everybody is under the magnifier glass, or the like everybody is under a ton of scrutiny anytime you have a change at the very top of an organization. So even while I might be confident that JJ Redick might be able to withstand even more organizational change, as it appeared that he was going to be able to withstand going from Bus ownership to Walter ownership, now going from Walter ownership to Iger slash Kushner ownership. I think there's a very real world where JJ Redick is able to prove his worth to this organization, and might even be given more resources in ways that we were expecting him to get from Walter, but never necessarily saw. So, is this an audition? Abso-freaking-lutely. But I think it's an audition that JJ Redick is more than capable of handling. So, and honestly, like when you kind of look at the things that ownership values in head coaches, obviously the winning and losing is first and foremost. But also JJ Redick has proven himself to be a very good face of the organization. And he is obviously coming from media, very good with the media, and is very good at managing the messaging around the Lakers at any given moment from a basketball standpoint. And given how many changes this franchise has now been put through over the last 14 months or whatever, having somebody who is that good and is consistently available as JJ Redick makes himself is something that Iger and Kushner are going to value. So, and I'm not saying that there is no other coach who could have navigated all of this, but for a coach as young as JJ Redick is, to navigate all of this stuff and set all of the potential detours and speed bumps and just like outright distractions that could have gotten the Lakers set on the wrong track. I think that JJ Redick navigating all of that stuff to get the Lakers to this point, where and also like JJ Redick. Now he hasn't been involved in the workouts there with the Lakers in Slovenia, but I do think though that when you have a team that seems as close as the Lakers are, if ownership is paying any attention whatsoever, and if the Lakers win, obviously, uh, new ownership isn't going to want to upset that camaraderie by changing coaches right when they get there. So, uh, I think JJ Redick has a couple of years left on his contract. It wouldn't surprise me after the season if JJ Redick gets another contract beyond that. I think he's probably here to stay. Gets along well with Luka for the most part. Gets along well with the majority. Like even it's funny, even Jared Vanderbilt, whose game just absolutely clashes with almost all of JJ Redick's basketball ideologies. Those guys have still been able to remain professional, to maintain some level of communication and navigate some of those frustrations that both guys feel for one another. And I think that that really kind of speaks well to JJ's ability to communicate with players, to set expectations, to live up to expectations, or explain when he falls short of those expectations. And I think, for a head coach in the NBA, given all of the egos involved and all of the potential distractions that basketball teams run into, or professional basketball teams run into over the course of a season, JJ Redick in this one specific sense, his ability to maintain relationships with players no matter what else is going on, or no matter what role a player is playing on a team. I'm very impressed by that. I think that'll be something that Iger and Kushner really value moving forward. So before I go into the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give my prediction as I have on these other episodes of how I see this going. And I think that once again, JJ Redick will, like, I don't think we'll see. Remember from Darvin Ham's first season to second season, we were all sitting here like, what the hell happened? Like, why is Darvin all of a sudden really bad at this? It made me wonder at various points in Darvin Ham's second season if I just like forgot that Darvin was a bad coach his first season. And I went back and I watched games. I went back and I checked tendencies. I went back and I checked quotes and stuff like that just to see, like, did I go nuts? Did I have a stroke? And I didn't. Turns out I didn't. It just turns out that Darvin Ham got way too high on his own supply that second season and legitimately forgot a lot of the things that made him so successful as a rookie coach. And I think that when you look at JJ Redick's second season to his first season, you see a guy who maintained his strengths and maybe built on some of his strengths, but also very importantly, built up some of his shortcomings from his first season to his second season to such an extent that a team missing Luka Doncic and essentially missing Austin Reeves went from being swept in the first round of last year's playoffs to winning a first round playoff series. And yes, like granted, there are other variables at stake. The Rockets were a lot more fraudulent than the Wolves were, but the Lakers, winning that playoff series, given the kick in the nuts that they had gotten right before the postseason, was so freaking impressive. And this was a head coach whose performance in that first round series as a rookie head coach made me so worried that I was wondering if the Lakers should maybe fire the guy, which I was wrong about. I'll admit that. And so like if you kind of take a look at and progress isn't linear, so I'm not saying that he will maintain the exact same trajectory to between his third and second season that he had in his second and first season, but I do think we will continue to see an upward trajectory from JJ, whether it's more balanced out or steeper, I don't know, but I do think he will continue to improve as a head coach. And I think like watching games in this third season, JJ Redick's ability as a head coach are not going to be something that we are all that concerned about on a night by night basis. And that's honestly all I ask for the vast majority of head coaches. Can he take a couple of leaps over the next few years and become one of those coaches who provides a legitimate advantage to his team compared to his peers? Maybe that'd be incredible if he could. But for now, I don't think that JJ Redick is going to be a team weakness or an organizational weakness. And honestly, for the vast majority of coaches, that's a pretty fine bar. All right. What are you talking about? Crispin Hall, every time I watch this podcast, I feel very depressed. This guy is very depressing, even when he isn't trying to be. He's just naturally cynical in his tone and demeanor. Look around at the world, okay? You want to know why I'm cynical? Open any headline. As far as like, I don't know. If I'm trying, you will know when I'm trying to be cynical or when I'm trying to be depressing. You might not like the tone. I'm not the most expressive person, but like I'm telling you guys, this was me saying that JJ Redick in his third season is going to be able to withstand a second ownership change, to potential firing of the guy who like the guy who hired JJ Redick. Rob Pelinka might not be able to stick around beyond the season. JJ Redick might outlast Rob Pelinka. The fact that this guy was hired for the sake of appeasing LeBron James, who isn't there anymore, and JJ Redick was able to develop a relationship with Luka Doncic that gives him, I think, real lasting power. Like, I think this is like a very positive episode for honestly, I is in all of these previews, I have really yet to say anything all that negative about any of them. I predicted an MVP season for Luka Doncic. I predicted an all-star season for Austin Reeves. I predicted a leap forward for Walker Kessler that might start to explain why the Lakers invested so much money and draft assets to bring him in. And now in this fourth installment, I said that I think JJ Redick is going to be an above average head coach, which is kind of insane given that this is his third year ever coaching anything. I just I feel like I've been pretty freaking positive about the Lakers so far. And that's kind of insane given that, again, the Lakers were just bought and sold for the second time in 14 months. It's been an insane run. All right. Let's go back up to the top here. Psychic Thursday. Rest in peace to Mrs. Parton. She was a great woman, artist, and businesswoman. The thing that I think we'll miss the most about Dolly Parton is that she cared sincerely about future generations, and specifically she cared immensely about literacy with those future generations. And I don't know if you guys have seen any research on this stuff or just like exist around kids. I have two young kids, and I can already see that like reading is going to be a real challenge in the era of TikTok and short form video and all these things. Like, and for Dolly Parton to invest millions upon millions of dollars to try to ensure that kids have access to books, I think that is just really admirable. And you're absolutely right to point out how wonderful an artist she was, one of the greatest songwriters in music history, a brilliant businesswoman who gave herself the ability financially to invest in future generations the way that she did, while also maintaining a great standard of life. Like Dolly Parton is legitimately an nth, what is it, an S tier human being. Like we don't get very many people like her very often, and losing one at only 80 feels really young. It's just real bummer that that today happened. But yes, rest in power, rest in peace. Thoughts, prayers, hugs, love to her friends and family and fans. All right. Next question comes from Robocop829. No update on Kaminga. Last thing out there was that a sign and trade was in talks again for Hardy this time. So I did read that article from Kurt Heelan. And he reported that the Lakers and Hawks had picked up trade talks again, this time involving Jaden Hardy. And if it was Hardy's contract going out, then the Lakers would be able to pay Kaminga about 10 to 12 million bucks, which would get you to about a $38 million 3-year offer. Clearly it hasn't happened yet. I think he's also weighing the possibility of going to Minnesota and seeing whether or not he would start there. I just think it's like I've been saying, I think this is going to stretch all the way into September, which isn't that far away, right? But I think this will stretch all the way into September. And I think we will see, when we get into September and as we approach training camps, Kuminga's camp will have waited as long as it could, and we'll have to make a decision. And whenever they make their decision, then, we'll finally get an outcome to this, or a resolution to this. I still think the Lakers have the best chance at landing Kuminga. I think that, The Wolves thing is interesting. I just don't think they paid $20 million a year to Dosunmu to come off of the bench, let alone to not close games. And if Kuminga goes to Minnesota and signs a minimum deal or even, an exception level deal for 6-ish million bucks, like, you tell me which player Minnesota is going to prioritize between him and Ayu Dosunmu. The guy that they got in September for, out of the bargain bin, basically, or the guy who right at the onset of the summer, they re-signed a long-term fruitful contract for. Like, this, if Kuminga thinks he's going to go to Minnesota and just automatically start alongside and push Ayu Dosunmu to the bench, I think he'd be mistaken. I think with the Lakers, there is nobody challenging him for that spot, especially if he does sign some 3-year, $36-38 million deal. Like, if he does sign that deal, he would immediately. Jake LaRavia isn't starting over him. Jared Vanderbilt isn't starting over him. It's just that he has the inside path to starter level minutes, and this is honestly why we have heard so many times over the course of the offseason. Oh, Cleveland is really challenging for Kuminga. Oh, the Clippers sure are challenging for Kuminga. Oh, Atlanta really wants to bring Kuminga back. And it's always felt like he'll go here, Lakers. He'll do it. He'll say, remember, anybody seen Blazing Saddles where the guy holds himself hostage and he's like, everybody back up, or what's going to happen. That's just what it's felt like. I feel like, Kuminga has been holding in his camp, has been holding Kuminga hostage for the sake of getting more money out of the Lakers. And the Lakers have been like, okay, we call your bluff. And this has stretched on as long as it has. But I think at the end of all of this, Kuminga winds up being a Laker, whether it's on the minimum, whether it's a 3-year deal by way of sign and trade, whatever it is. But I think the Lakers are very clearly the best situation for Kuminga. He and his camp know it, and they're just trying to maximize the financial opportunity to go along with the minutes opportunity that the Lakers present. Oop. All right. Do we have any more here? Yeah, I don't know. All right. Let's see. I think we're good. I think we're good here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go pick up Avery from school. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please, again, hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications for the show, just so that you're, in case your preferred podcast platform, if it is acting up, that you will be able to get it directly from the source here on YouTube. And until tomorrow, when I will figure out something else to talk about, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I'll talk to you then. Rest in peace again, Dolly Parton. Real bummer today.